A simple scaling policy can be used to instruct AWS autoscaling to perform a specific action, such as applying a scale-in or scale-out, that is, scale in or scale out when a metric reaches a desired value. Let's see how to do this. With the auto-scaling group selected, I go to the Automatic Scaling tab and then Create Dynamic Scaling Policy. From the list, I choose Simple Scaling. I will provide a name like Scale Out. Next, we need a CloudWatch alarm that will run this policy. Since we do not have one, I will click Create a CloudWatch alarm. Once CloudWatch is loaded, we go to Select Metric. EC2. I enter by Autoscaling Group, and here we see the name of the Autoscaling Group. Then, since what I want this policy to trigger with a CPU consumption metric, that's what I look for, and select here. Once done, I will leave that same name, and in period, I can choose 1 minute. In conditions, I leave it as static and I can indicate below that, if the CPU consumption is greater than 80% of use, that the alarm is activated. Therefore, I will click on Next. Here I can either select an existing topic or create one to notify me about events. I will leave all this as is and click Next. And name my alarm as CPU 80%. Next, and then Create Alarm. Once created, I go back to the Autoscaling Group's tab, refresh the list, select the newly created metric from the list, and undertake action. I can lead it as at 1 unit of capacity. This means that when the average CPU utilization of all instances in the Autoscaling Group exceeds 80%, a new EC2 instance will be added. Now, the value you specify down here is known as a recovery period. Recovery periods prevent additional scaling activities from being performed before allowing another scaling activity. Simple scaling activities must wait for the scaling activity to complete, and the recovery period expires before it can respond to additional alarms. So, the default value is 300 seconds, so I'll leave it at that and click Create. Now, let's add an additional policy. I choose Simple Scaling. Let's call this policy Scale In. Next, we'll create a new alarm. Select Metric, EC2, by Autoscaling Group. Select CPU Utilization. 1 minute period. Under Conditions, I leave it as static, and here I choose less than 40 and click Next. I don't need notifications for now, and I will name it as CPU 40%. Next, and then Create Alarm. Once created, I go back to the Autoscaling Group's tab, refresh the list, select the newly created metric from the list, and undertake action. I am now going to leave it as remove 1 unit of capacity, and click Create. So now we have 2 new scaling policies, one called Scale In, which comes into effect when the average CPU utilization is less than 40%, and another called Scale Out, which comes into effect when the average CPU utilization is greater than 80%. One way to verify this is to run this policy manually. So, I select the Scale Out policy, and before I do this, take note of the desired capacity up here. It is 1 at this point. I'll click on the Actions button, Execute, and confirm the execute. I refresh up here, and notice that the desired capacity has now changed to 2. If I go to Instances and refresh, we see that an EC2 instance is being launched as a result of the horizontal scaling activity.